frame of reference for negotiating with auditors regarding the contents of findings. MDOT staff might feel that something just isn't right with what they're hearing and seeing, and they might not have the words or tools to describe their feelings or the tools to negotiate regarding the contents. So if MDOT leadership embraced the message in those 5 or 6 documents, they could have the tools to contribute to an improved audit finding. In the same vein, we have over the years attempted to help MDOT find the words to address the verbiage of auditor objectives and conclusions. The words used in some objectives can result in significant unintended audit consequences, including a waste of time for the auditors. So having the tools to discuss objectives and conclusions can help the auditors stay focused on valuable areas and help yield more relevant audit results. And shifting gears a little bit, as part of an overall goal of improving the managerial tools of MDOT, my office has also provided guidance regarding the Council of Sponsoring Organization frameworks for internal control. And the federal government refer to these same concepts as the Green Book. But basically, internal control is what management is supposed to be about. The following buzzwords have morphed over the years, but at the highest levels, somebody develops a vision and a mission, and at all levels, executives, managers, and their teams develop goals and objectives. And internal control exists to ensure that objectives are met. That is what internal control is for. So, if essentially all audit objectives or all objectives are met, management is essentially doing its job. Objectives could be whether a program is effective or efficient or equitable. Objectives could pertain to whether the agency complies with its contracts, grants, laws, rules, regulations, procedures, policies, and specifications. Objectives could pertain to perceptions as to whether employees feel valued and empowered and fulfilled, or whether taxpayers feel like they are heard. Objectives are everywhere. And as objectives are everywhere, internal controls should be everywhere. So the elements of internal control start with developing an appropriate tone at the top. What is the governor's tone? What is the commission's tone? What is the director's tone? What are the chief's tones? However, all the tones, hopefully all the tones are from the same song, and hopefully everybody in the organization hums the same tune. The next internal control element is a bit more tangible. Considering each specific objective, everybody should chime in on what or can go wrong. This is called a risk assessment. And after the list of risks is developed, management needs to determine which risks are most likely and most impactful. And those likely and impactful risks require somebody to design a cost-effective internal control that helps prevent the risk. If properly designed, the controls need to be effectively implemented. So management and workers need to have an effective system of communicating information. What does management expect and why? Okay? What do the workers see day to day? The constant flow of information and communication in each direction helps everybody measure the pulse of whether the objectives are being met. Procedures, explanations, and reports are a few information and communication examples. As a critical final element of internal control, management's job is to determine whether the internal controls have been effectively implemented. For example, it does no good to have a well-designed control that someone who is uninformed as to the why the control exists puts it on a shelf because it's more work than they feel is warranted. How would anybody know that the control was put on the shelf if management did not spot check to ensure that the control was implemented? Writing a procedure does not guarantee that it is being followed. Note, until now, the entire internal control discussion that I've given you has not focused on avoiding audit findings. Avoiding audit findings is a side benefit from effectively implementing cost-effective controls. The real benefit from embracing these internal control concepts is that managers now have steps to success that are logical and relevant and relative to objectives, regardless of where the manager resides in the department. So unless there are any questions, those are my thoughts regarding OCA's efforts this quarter.
Before I get into that, I want to thank you for those comments, but also thank you for your usual email dissecting and trying to interpret what the package is that we get each quarter from MDOT, and ask you to sit down with the appropriate people at MDOT, go through that memo, and discuss that, and then at the next meeting, get back to us on, those issues that may still be open, as opposed to going through that at this time. Everyone okay with that? Anybody have any questions for Jack? Jack, one of the things I heard was info sharing. I will say that I have noticed over the last few months that the system of sharing information between MDOT and the OCA has gotten better. I'm proud of that and pleased, and I'm sure the director is as well. And I want to thank everyone who works on that info sharing for making the process better. The other thing, and I just thought about this, is I just got back from a week's worth of executive education back east. And it was on negotiation decision-making. And the world's utmost scholar and practitioner of that now is from practices at Harvard Business School, is from West Bloomfield. Matter of fact, his brother is the chief medical officer of Henry Ford West Bloomfield, so he comes back quite a bit, and he does do some pro bono work, and we might reach out to him to do a day or two of training. I thought I was a good negotiation decision maker. I found out I was not, and I think that we could get Deepak Malhotra to come out here, and we were 90 people listening. I'm sure we could pack an audience of 90 people for the day if we could spare the time, and it was interesting, and I learned a lot, and I am a better for it. So if you want to talk about that offline, Mr. Director, be happy to make the introduction. All right, since no one else has any questions for Jack, we will go on to the oversight. Patrick?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, commissioners. As we replace the exhibits that we used to bring to the commission for votes, we've been asked to provide information that will be helpful or valuable to the commission. So we've started to prepare some documents to share with the commission. We're happy to take any feedback or make any changes or add any information going forward for future meetings. The first document that you have is the quarterly bid letting summary. When you look at your electronic document, on the left-hand side, there's bookmarks so that you can click specifically to certain regions or pages that you'd like to go to, just to make it a little bit more efficient for managing or maneuvering in the document. It's a quite large document. The next item that we provided was the bid letting trends for fiscal year 22, as well as the number of bids by region, which was asked for to break down detailed information by the regions. And then lastly, we provided a report on procurement card activities and reviews that occurred during fiscal year 22. As we know, P-card is usually garners a lot of attention, so we wanted to show kind of the scope of the usage of the P-cards by the department, as well as those efforts that are conducted internally to monitor and review our P-card activities. Are there any questions?
I can't tell you how useful this information is to me on questions. I've been here 12 years, and it has been incredibly useful. And before I go into it, does anybody have any questions or comments? Well, we could definitely see by number of bids that the one bidders are probably where we expect them to be, which is superior. It's a harder place to get bids, and it makes up over 25% of the projects that have one bid. I suspect we're seeing a lot more one bids. We're seeing fewer bidders. I think we're down to 3 from 3.75. I think it's really just a matter of fact of how much work is out there and not enough contractors. Mr. Director, would you say that's probably the...
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And the other thing is, that's a big increase in P cards. Do we know why this is happening?
You're referring to September. So we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, and that's usually when people make final transactions for the year to pay off like full year contracts and things like that.
Okay.
So there's a rush at the end before we close the books to get all the payments in.
I always pay attention to P cards because over the years, that's where MDOT has been stung once in a while by by one bad apple, figuring out how to abuse a P card for a little while before we catch up to them. So thank you. I think that's very useful to have. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
D? Sorry?
I'm sorry. One other question. And Patrick, I mean, I love these graphs too. Starting a couple meetings ago, I finally could make sense of it all, so they really help. The number of, as the chairman said, the number of bidders is declining. I'm sure Mr. Director and others communicate with other states. Are they seeing a similar decline in contractors bidding, or do we have a significant construction issue or trend here just in the state of Michigan?
I think I'm going to need assistance from some of our folks in our construction contracting areas. D. Parker, the director, might be able to.
Yeah. Can you say that again?
Well, I'm just curious. All right, we're watching a decline in the number of bidders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that a nationwide trend, or is that just Michigan? And if it's just Michigan, what do we think the root cause might be?
You know, that's something we can look into. I'm not for sure if it's a nationwide trend. I'm not for sure of Ohio.
Or Midwest?
Yeah, that's something I think we'll have to look into. We can talk to our peers with the other states and see if they're having a similar issue as well, as far as seeing a limited number of bidders on their projects. It's something, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, I remember 20 years ago in the home construction area, and Michigan was having economic difficulties, and everybody bailed and went to Texas. And I'm not sure we've ever totally recovered from that. We still have a lack of skilled trades. So I was just curious if it's just us, then we can look at root causes and maybe try to address those, or if it's Midwest, then maybe we get together with the other states and look for solutions, or if it's nationwide, it's just nationwide.
Yeah. And like I say, Mr. Commissioner, like I said, we meet biweekly with our peers from other states, Midwest states, and maybe that's something we can ask them to see.
That'd be great.
If they're seeing, limited numbers of contractors bidding on projects as well.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So I think one of the biggest things is there's a lot of a ramp up of private sector work, right? Big three, there's some big projects, and I think that's taken some of those contractors out of the mix for MDOT that potentially used to bid to MDOT, and they're doing those private sector projects now, and they've taken their workforce as well. So I think Paul has probably noticed a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and that is a true statement. The number of bidders, I think, yes, but most contractors, they kind of work their risk. They strategize on what projects to go after. We've had a lot of big announcements by the OEMs, the three automakers building electric vehicle plants and all. So that is also taking away some of the contractors that would normally bid our jobs. I was talking to one of the contractors yesterday. We had a meeting at MIDA and said, well, we had a big operation in Florida because when things were slow here, we moved our operation there, but we're back here now. We're doing, most of our work is here in Michigan, so you'll see a lot of that going on. But I think the general sentiment is that the inflation issue is nationwide. That much I know. I've spoken to my colleagues from other states about. But the number of bidders issue, we certainly can look into that and see if that's also a universal issue.
Okay, well, that's good perspective. Thank you, Commissioner.
I've talked to two of the top contractors in Iowa and Illinois who I know. They tell me they're bidding less because they're bidding on bigger jobs, and they'd rather just bid on one big job as opposed to 3 or 4 smaller jobs.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So D, you might as well stay.
I appreciate it.
Or you can
Mr.
go back to
Chairman.
your seat and come back up if you want.
No, sir, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Page 50 there kind of starts the quarterly bid justification summary there for the fourth quarter for fiscal year 2022. Again, if you look at page 51 there, it has a graph showing our projects as far as lead jobs, as far as what was programmed, and as well as our benchmarks. And It also, on the right-hand side, right there in the middle, of course, lays out the lettings for each month, the engineer's estimates, as well as the low bid. So as you can see, for fiscal year 2022, we're about 15% over our engineer's estimate on that piece right there. So there's all the, again, as you can see with all the other pages there, it talks about rejections of bids and the number of rejections of bids, as well as the justifications towards the end of the package as well. Wanted to see, are there any questions in regards to the quarterly report right there that you have for fourth quarter?
Anybody? Oh, Greg?
Yeah, Dee, with the 15% overage, how is that going to impact future years' programs?
Right now, Commissioner Johnson, that's something that we're looking into, that we're continuing to look into as far as the impact goes for our future programs. You know, those, again, we're continuing to look at that. You know, the program will continue on, of course, and again, it may look different than what it does today, but a program will continue on for our project. So, but again, Commissioner Johnson, that's something that we continue to look at as far as future projects and things like that.
Okay.
Hopefully I answered your question there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Greg, you've been here associated with MDOT longer than I have. Have you ever seen so many bids rejected? Or us not, I mean, there's no fault in why we're over the engineer's estimate, but, I mean, I can remember times where, you know, we're basically right at engineer's estimate, you know, by a fraction percentage point for the year.
Yeah, this is a different time with the supply chain issues and escalation that we're seeing across the country and really around the world. So these some of the pricing that's coming in is shocking, to say the least. So
What are you seeing in Oregon?
same thing.
Same thing.
We had a bridge project that was over by 75%, I believe it was. So, and this was it was over by 50%, but it was a large project. So you're talking about a lot of dollars. So.
Dee, I'm gonna bet that our colleagues, different states, are over by 15% and more. So I expect that MDOT's increase in overage is probably the smallest in the country, because it's always the smallest in the country, so
Yeah.
we'll make note of that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any
No
other
more questions, we'll move on to Lindsay.
Actually, I have one more
sorry.
item.
You've
Commissioner
real estate
Summary
services,
report
sorry.
For the real estate services section to dispose of real property interest there. That's on, I would say, page 189, if you have that, the page numbers listed for you. Just for FYI purposes, and see if there's any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions?
I gotta scroll to it.
I think our
first.
189 is different than your 189.
Oh, sorry, yeah. 190, depending on where you're at.
Real estate services on mine is, it's your 189 is my 176 of the package.
Okay,
Basically, Comstock, Crystal Falls, and Ashtema.
Ashtimo.
Did I say that right?
It's
Ashtimo.
Ashtimo. It's close.
210, sale price 210, which was the appraised value, 7,800 appraised value, and 25,000 appraised value. No relationships to SOM or department.
That is correct.
I see no reason not to have any interest in questioning it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay. Lindsay, I came up, is this your first time being on the report?
It is, and I am not Jason Gutting, but I am here in his stead. So I have your final construction contracts, extras, and overruns report. Good morning, first of all. MDOT projects for July 2022 through September of 2022 had 47 projects totaling approximately $137 million finalized. 8 projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount. 25 projects came in under the original contract amount. The final monthly contract costs were respectively negative 0.25%, negative 1.48%, and 5.65% when compared to original contract amount. Fiscal year 2022 is averaging 0.52% under original contract amount. For local agency projects for the same period, July to September of 2022, 96 projects totaling approximately $84 million were finalized. 6 projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount, and 56 projects came in under the original contract amount. I believe there's 6 MDOT projects and 6 local agency projects presented in your Exhibit B pamphlet. Any questions?
Anyone? Thank you.
You guys are easy on me. Thank you.
Jack?
The Exhibit C, as has been the case for the last several years, there's nothing to report. The reports have been processed and handled timely, so I'm asking you to accept the report.
Anybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
The 5-year plan. Michael?
Morning, Mr. Chair,
Good morning.
Commissioners, Mr. Director. I'm Michael Case, MDOT's 5-year Transportation Program Specialist. As noted in your agenda, I'll be presenting our final draft of the 5-year Transportation Program covering fiscal years 23 through 2027. Recall this, the initial draft was brought to you in July and was approved. So for this presentation, we'll be focusing on updates to the investment strategy, including what's up in the upcoming fiscal year, as well as the results of our public engagement. As noted in your agenda, this is an action item, and we'll be requesting your approval of the final program and submission to the Michigan Legislature by March 1st, 2023. So over the next 5 years, MDOT is planning on a total trunk line investment of $15.8 billion. That's comprised of $11.86 billion in the highway program and a combined multimodal investment of just under $4 billion, with public transportation at $2.9 billion and aeronautics at just over $1 billion. So looking at some detail of the highway program investment, again, $11.86 billion over the next 5 years. For repairing and rebuilding roads and bridges, including pre-construction activities, we've got about $8 billion in the program, with $2.7 billion planned for fiscal year 23. Routine maintenance, covering activities such as filling potholes, street sweeping. We've got $2.3 billion in the program, with $444 million planned for fiscal year 23. Safety and system operations, we've got just under $1 billion in the program, $252 million in 23. In additional state and federally funded programs covering programs such as transportation alternatives, rest areas, and carpool parking lots, $512 million in the program, and just under $100 million in fiscal year 23. So again, $11.86 billion in the highway program, with $3.5 billion planned for the next fiscal year. Looking at the program by year, you can see here fiscal years 23 and 24 are a bit bigger than fiscal years 25 through 27. That's primarily due to the infusion of bond funds in those 2 years at $1.1 billion total, with $776 million in fiscal year 23 and $343 million in fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 25 also has bond funds in it at $103 million for a combined Rebuilding Michigan investment of $1.2 billion. Changing lanes over to the public transportation and aeronautics programs, as I already mentioned, we're planning on just under $4 billion over the next 5 years, with $2.9 billion in public transportation, with $589 million of that in fiscal year '23, and aeronautics with just over $1 billion, $231 million of which is planned for fiscal year '23. In addition to providing the numbers in this document, we're also telling a story, helping to connect projects with the priorities of the state and the department. Our key themes this year included equity and inclusion, transportation resiliency, complete streets multimodal, and the Rebuilding Michigan program, where we highlighted projects in the document. As these themes applied, one or more of these icons were included next to them to help connect those dots, along with a description of how the project is advancing the goals and requirements of each of these areas. So following your approval in July, we opened up the public comment period for 30 days, starting August 1st and ending August 31st. We worked with our Office of Communications to employ a pretty wide variety of strategies to help raise awareness of the comment opportunity with the public, from social media posts to stakeholder emails to press release, as well as working with print and broadcast media to help distribute information. We also made some significant updates this year to the 5YTP webpage on the MDOT website, including making it more mobile friendly, revising the content, how it's put together to make sure that it works with screen readers. And we also worked to implement a language translator so that any content about the 5YTP that people find online can be easily translated into over 130 languages. So our results this year, we received 334 comments on the program during those 30 days. In comparison, last year we received 191, so that's about a 74% increase over the previous year. We reached just under 130,000 people, again raising awareness of the program and the comment opportunity, and over 6,000 of which engaged with us in some way. So they may have shared it on social media, comment on it, or liked. That was counted as an engagement. The table on the right shows the comments, very condensed and summarized into 6 key themes here. You see at the top, complete streets multimodal was the most common theme among comments, with people really focusing on a desire for a greater emphasis on mobility and multimodal accessibility in our planning efforts and implementation of bicycle, pedestrian, and transit improvements. Non-5YTP project specific, that's geared toward areas or projects maybe that are outside of the program or projects that are not yet in the program. But the top concern there was over road and bridge conditions. So anything related to safety, design, or congestion that people commented on were counted in that category. Project-specific comments, you see 53 of those here. Most of them were either concern or support over a project or requesting changes to a project currently in the program. Most of the latter were focused on I-375 and a desire for more multimodal elements in the design. There were some concerns over the total investment, primarily the benefits of the multimodal and highway program investments, how those dollars are being invested and if they're being invested in the right place. Transportation resiliency, not many there, but some concern over environmental impacts of projects. And finally, equity and inclusion, again, not many, but there was a request for greater emphasis on equity and inclusion in our investment decision-making. So wrapping this up, again, we're requesting your approval approval of the final five-year transportation program covering fiscal years 23 to 27. Upon your approval, we'll be finalizing it for print and getting it ready for submission to the legislature, which we are required to do prior to March 1st of 2023. This will meet our statutory obligation under Public Act 166, Section 307 of 2022. One final thing I'll add, each year, you recall, we provide you a project change report from the previous five-year program with projects that either shifted years or were shifted out of the program in the next one. So we're expecting to have that to you between December of this year and January of 2023. And with that, if you have any questions or comments, we'll be happy to take them.
Anyone?
Michael, just to put it in perspective for those who may be visitors and don't sit through these meetings and those that may be listening online, almost $16 billion sounds like a lot of money over 5 years. Could you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but just give us a couple of statistics, like the number of highway miles that, not specifically that's applied to, but the total number of MDOT miles we're responsible for, the 9,000 kind of thing, and airports and those kind of things. Can you just do that off the top of your head or not?
Off the top of my head, there's a lot of numbers that
Yeah.
go into that 16 billion.
The big 40,000 foot numbers.
Yeah, the big 40,000 foot numbers is, again, just a reminder, this is the trunk line part of the system, which is relatively small in comparison to the total amount of miles across the state of Michigan. So I believe we're talking somewhere between probably at least 10,000 miles worth of improvements over the next 5 years. In terms of airports, that gets a little tough to understand because a lot of the airport programs are grants. So I believe a lot of those are planned right now, but they're not really specifically set in stone. So I think maybe that's something, as time goes on, we can provide some more concrete numbers on.
Well, I just like the public to have perspective on that. That just sounds like a lot of money, and I just like them to understand it's a huge amount of infrastructure that MDOT's responsible for, that all that money will be addressing. So that was my only point. Just want
Gotcha.
people to understand.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
I'll move.
With support, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right, we have the TAP approval from Lena and Zach.
Thank you. Oh, and congratulations to Commissioner Johnson on your induction into the Hall of Honor.
I forgot to mention that. Yes, congratulations. I think I was there.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here today. I'm going to talk with you and Lina briefly about our Transportation Asset Management Plan of 2022. So MDOT's TAMP is federally required. MAP 21 required states to develop and implement a TAMP for its pavements and bridges on the national highway system, including trunk line and local pavements and bridges. As Michael just mentioned, the trunk line is just a subset of the larger Michigan transportation network. TAMPs are required to be updated every 4 years, and MDOT's updated TAMP is its second full TAMP. The first was submitted and certified in the summer of 2019 after initial TAMP development in 2018. MDOT's 2022 TAMP is bipartisan infrastructure law, or BIL, compliant, and includes consideration of resiliency and climate change. So why are we here today? In order to comply with Michigan Public Act 325 of 2018, MDOT needs the Commission's approval of its federally certified TAMP to comply with state law. The Commission did this in October of 2019, and seeks approval today for its 2022 TAMP. So what does our TAMP look like? Here's an outline of the chapters without diving into all the nuts and the bolts of the plan. The main objective is to direct investment in Michigan's existing transportation systems and ensure that its facilities and services continue to fulfill their intended functions within the constraints of state and federal law. Our 2022 TAMP builds off our 2019 TAMP and describes the asset management processes by which MDOT makes its program and project decisions. It also includes inventory and condition information, an assessment of departmental risks and ways MDOT can mitigate these risks, and financial and performance gap analyses based on investment strategies outlined in federal guidance. As mentioned previously, in order to be BIL compliant, MDOT also considers resiliency and the ways that climate change impacts our asset management processes throughout the document. These are seen most significantly in our risk management and assessment chapters, as well as our life cycle analysis chapter. So a little bit more on that. First and foremost, bringing resiliency into our document started by bringing into the definition we developed during the long-range plan, MM 2045. The investment strategies that's seen on this slide here, by the way. The investment strategies within our TAMP are influenced by the results of the department's risk management and life cycle planning efforts, just as they are influenced by other important factors such as long-term transportation network goals and other financial constraints. That being said, MDOT aspires to more thoroughly integrate resiliency into its planning procedures and processes, of which asset management plays a critical role. The department is eagerly awaiting Federal Highway Administration guidance on how it might bolster its ongoing resiliency efforts. That said, there are a number of ways that we are already looking to improve things. We are using a flood risk tool in our metro region that we worked on with SEMCOG as a proof of concept on how we might take stock of flooding risks to our highways and better improve that process in project selection. We're also thinking through ways of how we can help address flooding in depressed freeway sections, and MDOT's investigating ways it can use asset management software for more effective pump station lifecycle management. And we'll continue to be involved with, assessing state of the Great Lakes and understanding better how those nearshore conditions and their impacts on our assets can be improved. The TAMP is an integral part of the department's planning and program development processes. It both takes direction from our long-range planning and informs our program development. Preservation is the key guiding principle for Michigan's future transportation investments, where Michigan strives to preserve, operate, enhance, and right-size the existing transportation network as efficiently and effectively as possible. To do this, it will build and manage to withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions and maintain a network that provides for predictable access, movement, and interconnectability. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Lina, to talk a little bit more about the scope of our TAMP. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lina Chapman. I'm a supervisor at MDOT in the Bureau of Transportation Planning. We're the Systems Evaluation and Program Development Unit. So we have a responsibility for revenue and condition forecasting, and we support a lot of the long-range and short-range planning documents that the department produces. So I'm here to talk to you today about the scope of the TAMP, the investment strategies it contains, the gap analysis my staff conducted, and what that information tells us about the investment needed on the national highway system. So the scope of this TAMP, as you can see here, covers but a subset of the road and bridge network in the state. So out of the total, I don't have the MDOT total right off the top of my head, but I do think Michael Case was right on point. We have 122,000 paved route miles throughout the state of Michigan and about 11,000 bridges. So of that entire system, this subset includes 6,457 route miles and 3,197 bridges, of which MDOT manages 81%, and then the local agencies, cities, counties, villages manage the remaining 19%. So the interstate is shown here in red. Non-interstate NHS trunk line is in blue. The non-interstate local portion of the NHS is the portion that you can see in black in like the metro areas. So in 1997, as I'm sure you are familiar, this commission approved 10-year aspirational goals for the state's trunk line system based on pavement health, where 95% of the freeway system would be maintained in good or fair condition, and then 85% of the non-freeway system in good or fair condition. And then a year later, similar condition goals were established for bridges at 95% for freeway. So these goals were met in 2007 for pavement and then 2008 for bridges, right on target. And then in keeping with this asset management goal, these same targets were applied to the National Highway System pavements and bridges that this plan covers. So portion of the TAMP that we are required to conduct is to, I'll go back to this slide real quick, is to create investment strategies that are based on the different categories here. So there's achieve national minimum condition, preserve condition of pavements, pavement and bridge assets, achieve that state of good repair, and then achieve constrained targets for asset conditions with the definitions there. Just want to go back here. So, sorry, I lost my spot. So based on the gap analysis, which compares the current constrained investment with the investment amount needed to reach that state of good repair on the interstate and non-interstate NHS, the state will need an additional $14.8 billion over the next 10 years, or an additional $1.5 billion annually for pavement preservation. This does seem like a very staggering amount, but it really is on track with information that's been provided in past years and past years' TAMPs. So the trends that we're seeing here in the pavement condition decline are very real, and we do our best to just present the information to you. So the gold line on the top there is that state of good repair strategy on the interstate and then a non-interstate NHS, and then that constrained investment kind of shows the decline of the pavement condition over the coming years. So just to give you a quick number here, so pavement health has declined in the past decade, as you can see, where that good fair percentage on the interstate was we're at around 78% based on the remaining service life measure that we use. That's data from 2020, and then the combined good or fair on the non-interstate was at about 70%. On the bridge side, it's a little bit more stable. The combined total NHS bridge condition right now is at about 93%, just shy of their 95% goal. And in order to reach that state of good repair for bridges, an additional $1 billion would be needed over the next 10 years. So I guess in summary, while MDOT continues to work toward the goal of a fully matured asset management system, additional work is necessary on our behalf to fully incorporate additional transportation assets, plan for and pay for current needs, and then do our best to anticipate future needs in alignment with the goals and objectives established in the MM 2045, the State Long Range Plan. And that's all I had for you today. Thank you. You're welcome. Yes. Thank you.
Did a motion. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. By opposed or abstaining, motion carries. Amy.
Good morning, everyone. I think you're on page roughly 200 and something for the annual report for the Tribal Affairs Program. So I'm Amy Matisoff, the Tribal Liaison for the Department of Transportation. And by part of our State Transportation Commission policy, as well as requirements within executive directives from the Governor's Office, I'm here today to just kind of give you an update on how we are doing on behalf of the Tribal Affairs Program. So quickly, November is Native American Awareness or Native American Heritage Month, and I'd like to just provide you with a land acknowledgement for the area we're sitting in today. So these lands where we stand today are the ancestral territories of the Anishinaabe, who have lived in the state of Michigan from before recorded history to present day. The Saginaw, Swan Creek, and Black River bands ceded this place in a treaty with the United States in 1819. We acknowledge and honor this place as well as the love and the respect that the Anishinaabe people have shown for the land and waters that sustained their ancestors and continue to sustain us all today. The Anishinaabe people's commitment to this place should encourage us to be better stewards of the land we inhabit and the waters on which we depend. So quickly, just an overview of kind of the requirements breakdown within the state of Michigan. FHWA has the supervening authority over the states to monitor the extent that federally funded state transportation planning and development projects may negatively impact tribal interests. By agreement between FHWA and the Michigan Department of Transportation, responsibility for project oversight and compliance with federal law for state transportation projects is delegated to MDOT by FHWA. At a state level, the state of Michigan has an accord for government-to-government relationships that serves to acknowledge from the state that each tribe is a sovereign nation and has right to self-governance and self-determination. These policy documents then led to many executive directives, the latest of which was in 2019 that resulted in the updated State Transportation Commission policy that you all approved in July of 2020. That executive directive requires many of the things you'll see noted in the annual report, as well as my role and my presentation to you today. Here's a quick map that shows the governmental office locations of the 12 sovereign tribal governments within Michigan. Tribal sovereignty is recognized individually by Congress, and each of the nations are politically independent from one another, although tribal citizens may share important historical and cultural connections to each other. So from a consultation standpoint, I'm very, very happy to announce that we finally held the MDOT Intergovernmental Transportation Summit in Battle Creek, hosted by the Nottawasepe Huron Band. COVID kind of set us back for many years, so it was really nice to meet in person and have everyone to participate. So the 12 federally recognized tribes were present, as well as the U.S. Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Federal Highway Administration, and other state of Michigan departments and partners. We also are very happy to announce that MDOT worked very hard to update its programmatic agreement for Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So that happened out of our environmental services section, and consultation took place with 12 federally recognized tribes within Michigan, as well as 40 other tribes that have ancestral homelands linked to Michigan. So around 50 tribes were consulted with over the last couple years to complete this update of the programmatic agreement. And that's executed between MDOT and FHWA. And then lastly on here, we also participated as a stakeholder in the creation and rollout of the State Tribal Affairs Training Module. So this is a training module that's offered to all state employees, just as an introduction to relationships and tribal sovereignty to all state employees. And I'm happy to announce our entire executive leadership team has completed that training, as well as many key staff within the department. And we're working on a broader rollout of that here in Native American Heritage Month, with some small group conversations with our equity and inclusion officer, and really broadening the understanding of tribal sovereignty within the department. From a region and TSC perspective, we have many great accomplishments. A few are pictured here, but the MDOT Grand Region and the Grand Rapids TSC staff worked extensively with the Gun Lake Tribe on the interchange improvements at US 131 and M 179. This interchange allowed for many different traffic impacts and improvements, and actually contributed to about the creation of around 263 jobs, and was completed ahead of schedule. So we're very happy about that. The Marshall TSC is working with the Nottawasepi Huron Band Tribal Police to get speed signs up to work with them on traffic around their property. MDOT has consulted with the Sioux Tribe on the potential of non-motorized improvements along M129 near their tribal health center. And staff met with the Bay Mills Tribe and the Chippewa County Road Commission to discuss the transportation network connecting Brimley to Sault Ste. Marie. So that's just a couple highlights. The in-depth report, as you can see, is in your packet that covers all of the different accomplishments that the Department of Transportation accomplished between central office and our Great Region staff. So moving into where we're headed for 2023. We are working on including Tribal Affairs Program in MDOT's updated strategic plan. We're participating in continuing to provide ongoing education and support to MDOT staff regarding tribal government coordination and consultation. Tribal consultation requests will be sent for additional major projects that happens from our departmental archaeologists, so any new projects that require coordination will continue to happen. We're also working on creating a tribal portal to assist with new components of that programmatic agreement related to Section 106 in hopes of streamlining communications with the tribes so that they fully understand what projects we're proposing and how they can best comment to us, because they do receive a lot of requests for coordination and consultation, and so we're trying not to inundate them too much with the new developments coming out of the programmatic agreement. And then we will continue to provide tribal liaison assistance to the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority according to statute. We'll also provide support to the Mackinac Bridge Authority and the International Bridge Authority as needed, and really just trying to increase the knowledge of our staff and keep communicating with the tribes as needed. So that's really all I have for you today. Do you guys have any questions on the report or any actions that we've taken? Thank you.
The public comment section, I believe you're together since we talked prior to the meeting, so come on up and the floor is yours. I want you to know that everything that's been sent in, we have in front of us in a packet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Gregg. I'm an engineering professor at the University of Michigan, but I'm here on behalf of a community effort to address a significant problem with Highway M14 between I-94 and US 23. Sorry, I didn't get slides prepared. This is in Ann Arbor. So M14 has a concrete surface that was made with an incorrect mixture, which has caused what's known as a hard top. This hard top causes very loud noise from cars that travel over the surface. It is constant, and it is louder than any highway you've probably ever driven over. In fact, this negatively impacts Wines Elementary School, which is adjacent to the highway. This noise can be heard inside the classrooms. It affects learning, and it is deafening on the playground. It also affects the neighboring community. And in 2016, MDOT had a maintenance project that many residents feel made the problem worse by dividing concrete slabs and introducing joints that create a pop, 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 pop effect for about 2 miles of road. These pops can be heard miles away from the highway. We have measured using decibel meters, noise up to 90 decibels on the playground. This is akin to operating a gas-powered lawnmower. It can cause permanent hearing loss over time, and this is what our children are subjected to on a daily basis at Wines Elementary School. We have, my wife and I have worked with MDOT over the past couple of years, trying to get them to address the problem. There is no disagreement about the existence of a problem or the cause of the problem. There is only a disagreement about prioritizing limited resources to fix the problem. We have created a petition that has been signed by nearly 1,000 residents and parents of children that are concerned about this issue. We shared this with MDOT. The city of Ann Arbor also passed a resolution addressing MDOT, asking them to fix the problem. Unfortunately, MDOT gave a pretty dismissive response, citing a lack of funding for noise abatement programs. We feel differently. We do not feel that we are asking for a normal noise abatement solution. We are asking for MDOT to fix the problem that they created. We are asking for a normal highway surface. As an example, MDOT did recently find funding to resurface the bridge going up to US 23. Well, not resurface, I'm sorry, add an asphalt top to the existing concrete surface. And this actually did solve the problem along that segment of the road. It is much better there. However, about 2/3 of the roadway still remains with this problematic concrete surface, and we are simply asking that MDOT prioritize the funds to add the asphalt surface, asphalt top to that roadway as well. We are eagerly hoping that the commission will help MDOT find the resources and prioritize this project. And the upcoming repair project in 2023 is the perfect time to do it. MDOT is scheduled to do maintenance on the roadway in 2023, but nothing more at the moment than standard concrete patchwork, which in the past has made the problem worse. So now is the time to fix it. Thank you.
I see we have a third card that's been handed to me, and Valerie, you must be on your way up.
Wait,
Oh, sorry.
I
Oh,
was, yeah, we were separate. Okay, that's okay, that's okay. Hello, my name is Kristen Drogas. I'm also here with the M14 group. And I want to talk about the results from the petition, which had a survey question that asked folks to explain how the noise impacted them. To preface, I have a PhD, I'm a social scientist, I analyze survey data every single day, so this is my jam, this is what I do. So when asked how the noise impacted them, there were several categories that people explained. Most everyone talked about the noise, describing the noise most frequently as deafening, as a roar, and as constant. Some folks said that it was like tinnitus. It is something that does not go away. Most frequently, the most common complaint and issue as to how this impacted them, the school. The school, when we say is adjacent, we say the school is directly next to the highway. So children play and learn with nothing but a chain link fence and some light brush in between the highway and their learning environment. Teachers cannot hear children. Teachers reported that they cannot open their windows despite the fact that the school has no air conditioning. It is disruptive in school. It is disruptive on the playground. In your packet on page 310, I just read this, a story about a boy who ran towards the brush at the edge of the playground, and the highway was so loud he could not hear his teachers calling him back. This is dangerous. In the parking lot at pickup and at drop-off, parents and teachers are reporting it is difficult for children to hear instructions while cars are circling around them. Parents are reporting multiple complaints from children that when they're on the playground and in the classrooms, they have difficulty hearing, they have difficulty concentrating. So again, that is the most prevalent issue. On top of that, the community is affected. The second most common issue in the survey was that people, including myself, can hear this inside of our homes. We can hear the noise. People reported it shakes their homes. 116 people, including myself, say this disrupts sleep. When I wake up with my 1-year-old in the middle of the night, I can hear the constant scream of M14. And I'm not the only person who said that this wakes up our children. One person said that his sons frequently wake up crying and scared because the noise is so loud they think that it is is a roar, it is a dragon, it's something scary for them. This has rendered folks unusable to use home features, such as being able to open windows, unable to use their deck, their patio, et cetera, or simply having to shout while standing in their driveway talking to neighbors. This relates also to the third most frequent issue, people saying they can't relax outside, they cannot use leisure spaces. The largest park in Ann Arbor is right off of M14. It is called Bird Hills Nature Area, and many folks said that they cannot enjoy the space there, including when using sound-canceling headphones, because they can still hear the roar of M14 over their sound-canceling headphones. I have experienced this myself. 100 people reported impacts on their physical and mental health, describing stress, describing hypertension, describing anxiety because of the constant noise. And finally, the last category of information was that 60 people, long-term residents, we're talking people who have been there 25, 35 years, have stated that this noise has in fact increased over time. Most of them cited the 2016 repairs as being one of the main reasons why this has increased sound over time. And so folks have offered many solutions in this survey. They're asking for many things that can be done that we think that in tandem would help alleviate some of the issues, reducing pardon? Yeah, engine braking, thank you. We can hear engine braking. That is probably one of the loudest constant noises that we hear. Engine braking happens constantly. Add that on top of what is essentially sounds like gunfire with the concrete slabs being jointed, that also causes issues. And so folks are asking to reduce the speed limit, to add that asphalt layer in terms of helping noise abatement, and to just really help us, help our community prioritize this. We are suffering, and our children are suffering, and we think that they deserve a quiet, peaceful learning environment so they can be better citizens of the state of Michigan.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of the policy and decision makers for MDOT in one fell swoop this morning. I'm sorry to be late, but the bus was late, taking my kid to Wines Elementary. I'm Valerie Brader, and we do live approximately a mile from M14 in Ann Arbor. We walk over the bridge and immediately turn passing M14 to take our son to Wines on days when we walk. And I am here to, as the others were, to comment about the proposed M14 roadway project that was in the plan that you just approved and that will be submitted to the legislature in a few months. We have been asking MDOT to address this issue since 2021. I believe I was one of the 51 people who were in that group that expressed concerns regarding this specific project in your public comment period. And I wanted to note that you only received 443 comments on your plan, but more than 1,000 people have signed the petition asking that this be addressed. And if you're coming out to fix it in 2023, it seems to be the perfect time to address the problem. And as indicated, this noise is not just normal, look, it's kind of unpleasant to live next to a highway noise. On the playground, it is so loud that if you were exposed to that for 8 hours steadily at your job, your employer would be required to give you free hearing protection. This is really needs addressing. Now, I also appreciate how difficult the state budgeting has been to try to reach back to a state where Michigan roads are in a good place. But this is also a year where the state has approximately $7 billion in excess revenue it can spend. If MDOT is not asking the legislature for a chance to fix this now, when it can coordinate its 2023 project to address the problem that arose in 2016, and the state has this much excess funding, if you are not putting that in your request to the legislature now, what you are saying to us is that our kids' hearing will never be a priority for the state of Michigan, and fixing this problem is never going to be a priority. Because if you can't ask for the money when you're set to address it and the state has $7 billion of excess revenue, when exactly will there ever be enough money to address the problem? If the decision makers and policymakers of MDOT do choose to ask the legislature for additional funding to address this, We will be there to support that request. We will be there to explain why this is not a normal noise abatement project and why this is so important to the hearing of our kids and to addressing a problem that was created by the 2016 fix. So to sum up, again, thank you so much for considering this. When my son seems to ignore what I'm telling him, I need to know it's because he's not listening to me, not because he can't hear me. This is the time to ask for the funds to fix this project. This is the perfect opportunity. You're actually going to be out there. You've actually got labor. You're actually going to bid it. Get those contractors out there. Now is the time to add the additional funding it would take to dampen the noise so that the elementary school kids will be able to hear on the playground. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Director, I thought you might want to address, as we discussed before the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, before I make a comment on the condition of the roadway, I just want to say to the neighbors coming from all the way from Ann Arbor, thank you for doing this. This is what this meeting is supposed to be about. I truly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here. This is especially tough for me because I live next door to this whole project. I was in University Region for 7 or 8 years. I was there when we did the fix in 2016. We thought we had taken care of the problem. Overlay will not work there because of the joints are so close to each other, and if you put a asphalt overlay on that pavement, I'll give it 5 years. Everything will be back up. So we are very mindful of the issue. I know Wines Elementary School was built in 1957. Before the freeway was built in 1965. So these are some of the things that, even though it doesn't fit in that perfect box criteria that we look at when we study noise issue, but I have reached out to Federal Highway to see what else we can do in this regard, because this is not a normal circumstance. Wines Elementary School is only about 200-300 feet away from the freeway, so I can honestly understand your frustration about this, and want to assure you that writing that letter, it was not being dismissive. Very tough for me to sign that letter. And after that, I did talk to the chairman. We are working with the Federal Highway Administration to see what we can do about this issue. So I just want to give you my words on that.
Director, perhaps we can explain why we need to speak to Federal Highway to solve this.
Because again, to expend funds to do noise walls, there's a lot of federal criteria that you have to use to either determine that, yes, this location meets that criteria or not. And also for us as MDOT as a state, we do not have dedicated funds set aside for noise abatement. So we are working with the Federal Highway to see if there's a way we can find a solution to this problem.
Thank you for your comments to all of you, and as you can tell, it's not being ignored. When this first came across my desk, I picked up the phone and contacted the director, and then I picked up the phone and contacted the mayor. So you're not being lost in a shuffle.
Thank you, guys.